This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
RFK on the Hill. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. The president's pick for Health and Human Services Secretary is testifying today on Capitol Hill. Robert Kennedy Jr. appearing before a Senate panel about his qualifications to lead health policy in this country.
He's a disruptor. Can he be a disruptor without being a destroyer? We'll see.
Kennedy's views on vaccines will dominate the debate. The nominee is adamant he's not opposed to modern science and is not anti-anything. Conservative podcaster Guy Benson.
If you look at the polling, the most popular nominee for this cabinet that Donald Trump has nominated is RFK Jr., so you've got public sentiment there. But on the flip side, you're going to hear some really tough questions about vaccines.
Kennedy's abortion politics also subject for debate. The nominee is pro-choice, contrary to most others in the Trump White House. RFK says he's committed to combating the chronic disease epidemic and making America healthy again, especially our kids.
We're creating diabetes problem in our kids by giving them food that's poison, and I'm going to stop that.
Kennedy has 2 days of hearings on the Hill before a vote in the full Senate on his nomination. He can only afford to lose 3 Republicans if he's going to win confirmation. President Trump once again beating back transgender indoctrination.
That's right, Bob. A new executive order from the Trump White House bans access to so-called gender-affirming care for anyone under the age of 19. President Trump says the U.S. will no longer fund, sponsor, promote, assist, or support transitioning procedures on children. Critics argue the government has no right to insert itself into private medical decisions. Supporters of the ban say it prioritizes parental rights. Jeremy Miller, Family Life News.
Thank you, Jeremy. President Trump offering buyouts to federal workers who don't want to return to the workplace. The deferred resignations include severance packages of 8 months' pay and benefits to some 2 million federal workers. The White House says 5 years after COVID, just 6% of the federal workforce is back at the office full-time, and that, says the White House, is unacceptable. Freezing the freeze. A federal judge has hit the pause button on President Trump's pause of federal loans and grants. Correspondent Nancy Cordes.
Thousands of organizations that rely on federal funds were making panicked calls to Congress to try to figure out if they're on the list.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt trying to calm concerns.
Social Security benefits, Medicare benefits, food stamps, welfare benefits, assistance that is going directly to individuals will not be impacted.
The judge's order stays until Monday. The federal freeze on hundreds of billions of dollars in government spending. Our coverage continues with Jackie Heinrich of Fox News.
The Biden-appointed judge, who's been on the D.C. District Court for about a year, cited the possibility of irreparable harm.
The Trump administration ordered the spending freeze so it could review whether government payouts were violating recently signed executive orders. President Trump today signs the Laken Riley Act into law. It marks the first legislative win of his administration. That law requires ICE agents detain illegal immigrants accused of crimes. It's named after a Georgia nursing student who was murdered by an illegal immigrant. 12 Democrats in the Senate, 46 in the House joined Republicans in supporting the soon-to-be law. The Trump administration is doubling down on its assertion that all immigrants in the country illegally are at risk of deportation.
President Trump is focused on launching the largest deportation operation in history, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says.
And if you are an individual, a foreign national, who illegally enters the United States of America, you are, by definition, a criminal. And so therefore, you are subject to deportation.
Levitt says the president does believe violent criminals, murderers, and drug dealers should be the priority of ICE, but adds that does not mean others who illegally entered the nation are off the table.
Correspondent Jared Halpern. Education experts today blame screen time and chronic absenteeism for declining reading skills in our school children. Reading scores in the 4th and 8th grade are down 2 points from 2022. A third of all 8th graders are not proficient in reading. A civilian jet has just made history.
The XB-1 aircraft, manufactured by Boom Supersonic, is nicknamed Baby Boom and reached an altitude of more than 35,000 feet before accelerating to Mach 1.122, which is equivalent to 750 miles per hour. The company says it's the first time an independently developed jet has broken the sound barrier.
Matt Piper reporting President Trump is asking SpaceX CEO Elon Musk to go get a couple stranded astronauts who've been in orbit for 8 months. Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore were part of a mission to the International Space Station back in June. It was supposed to last 8 days. Issues with that Boeing spacecraft left them hitchhiking about 200 miles above the surface of the Earth. Trump posted on Truth Social last night that, quote, Elon will soon be on his way, end quote. Still to come on the Noon Report, Trump bans child sex change operations, Wegmans chicken nugget recall, and 35 strikes in a row, an unheard of high school bowling record.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams, calling for a blustery afternoon with flurries and some snow squalls in the area and falling temperatures. I'll have forecast details in 10 minutes.
All right, Kevin, we'll see you then. Let's check the stories making news across New York and Pennsylvania. A northern New York community in mourning today after a massive house fire that claimed 6 lives in the town of Messina. 3 boys were among those who perished. Messina Central School Superintendent Ronald Burke says the entire community is devastated.
It's unbearable, frankly. To lose one child is one thing. To lose 3, it's a shock.
The boy's parents and another woman also died in the fire, which is under investigation. Grief counselors will be on hand at the school where the boys attended tomorrow. Today is Lunar New Year, and schools in the Empire State are closed for that occasion.
It's a new school holiday for students in New York State, the first time they've been closed in observance of Lunar New Year. Lunar New Year celebrates the beginning of spring and the new year on the lunisolar calendar. Today begins the year of the snake. New York Governor Kathy Hochul signed legislation in 2023 making Asian Lunar New Year an official holiday for public schools statewide. Schools did not close for the holiday in 2024 because the date fell on a Saturday.
Correspondent Tanya J. Powers. The Elizabethtown Area School District in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, has adopted 2 new gender identity policies. One restricts preferred pronoun use. The other bans trans athletes from competing in girls' sports. This parent is all for that.
Biological born males should not be allowed in girls' locker rooms or allowed to participate in women's sports. Please move forward and get these policies in place to protect the children.
The vote was 8-1 in favor of the changes. The new policy takes effect in March. A transgender runner at the Rochester Institute of Technology clobbered the competition at a meet over the weekend. Sadie Schreiner, born Camden Schreiner, clocked in more than a second faster than the second-place finisher in that NCAA Division III track and field meet. And that's not fair, says women's sports activist Melissa Batty-Smoose.
To me, it's like common sense. There should not be biological men playing in women's sports. We need everybody to stand up and make sure that this does not continue.
Congress this month approved legislation that bans transgender athletes from competing on girls' or women's sports teams. That legislation is pending in the U.S. Senate. As mentioned earlier, President Trump has just signed a new executive order that limits any future future federal funding for transitioning minors. Reporter Jessica Rosenthal.
The executive order says it is the policy of the United States that it will not fund, sponsor, promote, or support the transition of a child from one sex to another, and that the federal government will enforce all laws that prohibit or limit these procedures. This includes on puberty blockers, hormones, and actual surgery. The plan included in the order is for Health and Human Services to produce a review of existing literature on best practices for helping children with gender dysphoria. The heads of federal agencies are told in this order to ensure institutions that get federal grants end any practice that helps minors transition.
The U.S. Supreme Court will rule in June on whether laws that ban child sex change operations are constitutional. After being accused of misgendering coworkers, a 20-year veteran of a New York State museum has been fired. Now she started a First Amendment lawsuit. Here's Family Life's Greg Gillespie.
Deanna Birkmeyer's federal lawsuit challenges a New York State gender expression law. She contends she was fired from the state-owned Genesee Country Village and Museum after she refused to use female pronouns for co-workers she considered to be male. This suit hasn't gone to trial yet, but similar court rulings have held that individuals cannot be coerced into speech that they do not agree with. Greg Gillespie, Family Life News.
Thank you, Greg. Now to the ICE raids happening across this country. Western New York Congressman Nick Langworthy says it's simply not true that ICE agents are going into schools and arresting migrant children.
It is not happening. It is absolutely not happening. That is not the mission that is being executed right now. They were very crystal clear about that with me. These are parents of children. These are family people. They're members of our community that are doing this job. And they are there finding the worst of the worst to get them off America's streets. And that's going on across this country right now.
The Republican representative met yesterday with ICE agents in Buffalo. Rensselaer County in the Albany area is the only county in New York that's voluntarily cooperating with federal ICE agents in enforcing immigration law. County Executive Steve McLaughlin says President Trump is fulfilling a campaign promise.
You know, he's off and running. He's doing what he said he was going to do. He's doing what the people voted for, what they said they wanted.
McLaughlin says his county will do whatever it takes to comply with Trump's immigration policies.
If somebody's in our jail already, we're going to run them through their federal database to see if they are in fact wanted by ICE. I cannot believe we're the only county with the backbone to do that.
The ICE raids will target the worst first, but the White House says all migrants in the country illegally are subject to deportation. Now to ice of a different sort. Icy buildup along the shores of Lake Erie could cause problems for Hamburg's Lakeshore residents in western New York. Kevin Hoke owns Hoke's Lakeshore restaurant and is worried about potential flooding when the temperatures rise.
I think this is the first time the Lake Erie has frozen in quite some time now. It looks like the moon out there right now. If it just stays like that, we're good. But, you know, you just never know with Mother Nature.
Yeah, you never know. Ice that's formed in the Allegheny River in western Pennsylvania is raising flooding concerns as well. Rain and above normal temperatures later in the week may increase the potential for ice jam flooding. Last week's frigid cold caused up to 6 inches of ice to form on the Allegheny River. That's something that river hasn't seen in at least 7 years. The American Heart Association says popular weight loss drugs are not easing the risk factors for high blood pressure or diabetes.
It's really hard to lose weight, and we know that especially with people with cardiovascular disease, they can decrease your risk of cardiovascular death, right? That's the people who are out there. But for the next generations, the people coming up, we have to change our whole outlook. You're 40% now. You know what it was? I just looked it up in 1960. The obesity rate was 13%.
CBS News chief medical correspondent Dr. John LaPook says our ever-growing sedentary lifestyles are partly to blame for this. Wegmans is recalling frozen chicken nuggets that may contain bone fragments. It's food you feel good about. Nuggets were sold in 46-ounce bags and had a best-by date of August 26th, 2025. Anybody who bought these chicken nuggets can either throw them out or return them for a full refund. A Colony, New York high school bowler bowler recently bowled, get this, 35 strikes in a row. Anybody that's bowled knows that is nearly next to impossible. Bill Carl is the varsity bowling coach there.
I have never seen an individual performance like that, and I probably never will again.
The king of pins, Jacob Tirado, scored the greatest bowling performance in high school sports history during a recent bout against Shaker High in New York's Capital Region.
I was just in shock after I did it. I didn't really feel it until a little bit later that day because my body was in such shock. It's pretty meaningful because, what else can you say about breaking a national record besides wow, I really just did that.
Yeah, you really did just do that. 35 strikes in a row. Tirado's score of 890 for that January 16th match is a new national high school bowling record. And get this, folks, he's just a junior. Tirado will be back for more next year at Colony High School near Albany. We've got more sports next. The 2-minute drill on Family Life.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, the Buffalo Sabres had not one but two guys turning in the hat trick last night. Tage Thompson and J.J. Peterka both found the back of the net 3 times to lead the Sabres to a blowout victory over the Boston Bruins. Zach Benson also scored for Buffalo. At the Garden, keeper Frederick Anderson was too much for the Blue Shirts. He stopped all 22 shots the Rangers fired at him, and that, of course, means New York lost the game. It was a 4-zip shutout by the Canes. The Islanders are continuing to trend upward. They won their 5th in a row, and this one was a 5-2 victory over the Avalanche. Simon Holmstrom led the Isles with a pair of goals. Elsewhere on the ice, the Jets 4-1 winners over the Canadiens. Likewise, the Blackhawks 4-1 winners over the Lightning. The Flames fell to the Caps 3-1. Dallas edged Vegas in overtime 4-3. And the Ducks took care of the Kraken 6-4. On the hardwood, Tyrese Maxey erupted for 43 points last night to lead Philadelphia to a 118-104 victory over the LA Lakers. Kelly Oubre chipped in with 20 points for the Sixers. The Rockets outlasted the Hawks 100-96. Golden State down Utah 114-103. And it was the Trailblazers 125, Milwaukee 112. Don't know if you've been paying much attention to baseball during this offseason, but it seems like the Los Angeles Dodgers are signing everybody except for Juan Soto. They inked another stellar arm to their bullpen, signing Kirby Yates to a 1-year deal. That is a look at sports.
Hey, if you got the money, thank you very much, Randy. Still to come on the Noon Report. Supersonic flight, eggflation, and doomsday countdown.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm Shane Morris. Recently, internet celebrity Andrew Tate was back in the headlines after being released from house arrest in Romania. The champion kickboxer turned influencer and life coach is facing charges of sex trafficking of minors. Anyone familiar with Tate's videos won't find these allegations hard to believe. He has openly billed himself for years as a pimp, gotten rich running a webcam pornography ring, and taught men how to manipulate and abuse women via his Hustlers University. Tate has over 10 million followers on X, and before YouTube took down his channels, his subscription-based get-rich-quick program, The Real World, had accumulated 450 million views. In other words, despite his rap sheet, a lot of people are listening to him, and most of those are young men. According to the UK-based market research consultancy Savanta, in 2023, 1 in 3 16 to 25-year-old men said they had a positive view of Andrew Tate. Anecdotally, it seems more than a few of them are Christian young men. Nancy Pearcey, author of The Toxic War on Masculinity, wrote recently on X, quote, "A former graduate student of mine now teaches at a high school, and she sent me an email saying all of my male students are fans of Andrew Tate. They're even including quotes from Andrew Tate in the yearbook. I asked, where do you teach? At a classical Christian school. So why the draw to Tate? Especially for young men who claim to follow Jesus? Well, one answer, suggested by a writer at The Federalist, is that Tate exploits a void created by the war on masculinity. Mainstream culture, under the influence of progressive and feminist ideas, has for years dismissed everything distinctive about men as toxic. Male strength, competitiveness, and physicality have been denounced in pop culture and medicated in schools. The idea of fathers leading a home has been mocked ceaselessly on television, and boys have been subtly taught that there's nothing they can do or aspire to that girls can't do better. Faced with this crisis of identity, many boys and men turn to online gurus who assure them, contrary to the message they get everywhere else, that their masculinity is good. The image these gurus project of physical fitness, financial success, self-mastery, and confidence with women can be intoxicating to guys who've been called toxic all their lives. And too often, this retreat to morally iffy influencers has been driven by churches failing to offer a healthy and robust alternative vision of manhood. Faced with the question, what does it mean to be masculine? Many pastors and Bible study leaders fumble, not wanting to engage in stereotypes and failing as a result to point to anything uniquely good about being a man. Ultimately, young men, when left to be taught by assertive online influencers and eager to avoid the feminist ditch, can be driven straight into the pimp ditch. They must instead be taught through real relationships with fathers, pastors, friends, and mentors who are willing to live out all that is distinctive about God's design for men. That's the true meaning of a role model, and the call to all of us who know young men asking this age-old question. For the Colson Center, I'm Shane Morris.
Thank you very much, Shane. Outside next, Kevin Williams.
Here is your Family Life weather forecast for this afternoon. Blustery, variably cloudy with flurries and snow squalls, blowing snow. Temperatures dropping will end up in the 20s. Tonight, some local lake snow, especially east of Lake Ontario. Otherwise, becoming partly cloudy with flurries, low temps colder than last night teens. Tomorrow, some early flurries for some, but a good deal of sunshine, high in the 30s. Friday is cloudy with rain, ice, and snow. Temperatures on Friday climbing toward 40 and then dropping back through the 30s.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much. This is the Noon Report. I'm Bob Price, and here's what's happening. Wednesday, January 29th. President Trump's pick for Health and Human Services Secretary is being vetted today by a Senate panel. Robert Kennedy Jr. facing tough questions about his views on vaccines. Zen Honeycutt with Moms Across America is a big fan of RFK.
He is a man that will put health and safety first, before party lines and before the corporation profits.
Tomorrow, Kash Patel, the nominee for FBI director, and Tulsi Gabbard, tapped to head national intelligence, will get their Senate confirmation hearings. The White House offering severance packages to federal workers who don't want to return to the workplace.
The Trump administration is willing to pay federal employees through September 30th if they don't want to return to the office, but they have to resign by next Thursday. A senior Trump official says the goal is to, quote, make sure that all federal workers are on board with the new administration's plan to have federal employees in office and adhering to higher standards, noting, quote, we are 5 years past COVID and just 6% of federal employees work full-time in office. That is unacceptable.
Correspondent Brooke Singman. President Trump has just signed another executive order. This one bans sex change operations on children under the age of 19. Later this year, the U.S. Supreme Court will rule on whether states have the right to forbid transitioning procedures on kids. Federal judge has paused the president's freeze on federal grants and loans. The stay was ordered just as that executive order was set to take effect. New York Attorney General Tish James.
Not only does this administration's new policy put people at risk, but it is plainly unconstitutional. The president does not get to decide which laws to enforce and for whom.
The Trump administration paused those government payouts to ensure they were not conflicting with his executive orders. The dreaded doomsday clock is a second closer to midnight.
The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists has moved its doomsday clock 1 second ahead. Daniel Hulse is the group's chairman.
It is now 89 seconds to midnight. This is the closest the world has ever been to midnight.
He cites Russia's nuclear threat as it fights Ukraine and the potential military use of AI.
Correspondent Michael Wallace says the doomsday clock was invented in 1947 over the urgent need to control the proliferation of nuclear weapons. Russian President Vladimir Putin has ruled out face-to-face peace talks with his counterpart in Ukraine, but adds he's still interested in winding down the war. Reporter Holly Williams says war-weary Ukraine would also like a ceasefire.
A deal that frees
freezes the front line and then protects Ukraine against being invaded again by Russia would probably be accepted by most Ukrainians. But a deal that redraws the map, that rewards Vladimir Putin with parts of Ukraine and then doesn't protect this country, I think many Ukrainians would prefer just to keep fighting.
Also overseas, several are dead, many more injured as tens of thousands of Hindus rushed to take a holy bath in a river at a huge religious festival.
Devotion turns to horror at the world's largest religious gathering. Tens of thousands of Hindu pilgrims got caught in the crush. Desperate ambulance crews rushed to reach victims. The Kumbh Mela takes place only every 12 years, and this year's grand festival, timed to a celestial alignment of the sun, moon, and Jupiter, only takes place every 144 years. 400 million pilgrims expected over 6 weeks. Some will never go home.
Correspondent Vicki Barker. Back in this country, egg prices remain a big problem.
They're expected to increase another 20% since millions of chickens are being slaughtered every month because of bird flu. Rhonda Self owns a diner in Raleigh, North Carolina.
We had to go up on the prices because the eggs have went crazy high on us.
The average price nationwide for a dozen of eggs is approaching $5.
Correspondent Jim Krasula. A new prototype passenger jet has just broken the sound barrier during a test flight. The XB-1 aircraft accelerated to over 850 miles an hour yesterday while flying at 35,000 feet over California's Mojave Desert. You're listening to The Noon Report, a midweek edition right here on Family Life.
Welcome back to another edition of Real Answers, a regular Wednesday feature here on the Family Life Noon Report, where we discuss the issues that matter to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Chris, welcome back.
Thank you, Mark. Good to be here.
A frosty welcome back to you. It's here we are in the late January, and it's smack dab in the middle of the winter blues.
Let this winter pass on by.
Christmas in the rearview mirror. The driveway is encrusted in ice and snow in a lot of cases, and it's cold and it's nasty, and what are we to do?
That's right. And it's so, you say that Christmas and the holidays are in the rearview mirror, and now we've kind of entered that period of time when most people, I should say, have taken down their lights, and it's not quite as bright and cheery out in the streets as it was even 1 month ago. So we're definitely into the I don't know, it's not really a dog days of winter. What's the opposite of dog days of summer? We're in the middle of it now, aren't we?
So, we've actually, in more recent times, we've heard some more proper terms put to some of this, such as SAD, seasonal affective disorder. So speak to that a little bit, if you would.
Yeah, the reduced light, natural daylight that we have in these parts here in the wintertime definitely has an impact on people. Over the course of, we'll say, the past 20 years, it's become more evident. And they've actually, like you just alluded to, has given it an actual disorder name, seasonal affective disorder. And I would say to some degree, most people are probably impacted by it, or to one degree or another. You do have folks that really enjoy wintertime, and then, believe it or not, Mark, there's actually a subset of folks that have seasonal affective disorder in the summertime.
I'm married to one.
Okay.
Anything above like 60, she gets increasingly unhappy. So she embraces winter. So it's not everybody.
Yeah. There's not that many people that do say that they would prefer to have the dark, gloomy days of winter over the bright sunshine of summertime, but they're out there.
I guess in our region here, primarily in New York and Pennsylvania, where we get winter in spades, as it were. It's the worst problem here. It's not just weather, though, is it?
No, a lot of it has to do, again, like I said, you get the hustle and bustle of the holidays, and then, of course, after that, there's a big slowdown right afterwards. But then, a lot of people are like, okay, come on, spring, let's get those brighter, sunnier days back. It's not entirely winter. Again, it's just kind of a change in the activity levels, and there's not as much going on immediately after the holidays. So there's a lot of factors that really kind of play into it. But the amount of daylight, the amount of sunny days, in theory, is a lot less, obviously. In the wintertime, we don't have the several days in a row of sunshine, and it's that natural lighting and people's lack of exposure to it is probably the primary driver of seasonal affective disorder.
You're listening to Real Answers, a regular Wednesday feature here on the Family Life Report. I'm here along with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. We're singing the winter blues, as it were. So what are some good practical ways to tackle that, Chris?
Well, one thing you want to do is you want to maintain your communication and your contact with other folks. Continue to go to church. Continue to, if you're involved in small group ministries or other activities for your church, just maintain that structure, maintain that contact with others. That is really important. You don't want to, you don't want to isolate. If you do have a hard time with some seasonal depression, you definitely don't want to isolate and keep yourself away from others. Maintain your activity level, maintain your daily routine, because that right there is very important. That keeps you going. And then also, if you can get outside on a day that is a little brighter or a little sunnier and a little bit warmer. I know that's been hard to do this January. This has been a very cold January.
Yeah, for sure.
Try to get out and get some of that natural sunlight reflecting off the snow into your face. They say even as little as 15 minutes can have a noticeable impact on your mood levels. Getting that fresh air as well. We tend to stay inside, and stagnant air can also not be the healthiest thing in the world. So get outside, get some fresh air, and also exercise. If you belong to a gym or otherwise you like to put on the cross-country skis, the snowshoes, or just walk up and down your road a few times just to keep your activity levels up, those are things that are all going to make a big difference.
Just find a way to embrace it one way or the other.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. You've been listening to Real Answers, a Wednesday feature of the Family Life Noon Report, where we discuss the issues important to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Thanks again, Chris, and stay warm.
My pleasure. Absolutely. You too, Mark.
All right, great job today, guys. As always, Real Answers airs Wednesdays at noon. You can also subscribe, listen to, and share this feature, as well as all our original podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. On the weather map this midday, another strong cold front low pressure center crossing the area today, kicking up its heels with snow showers and squalls and blowing snow. Travel with care. Things will settle down. The sun is back tomorrow. The next weather maker is a messy system promising rain, ice, and snow Friday and Friday night. For this afternoon, blustery, variably cloudy with flurries and snow squalls, blowing snow. Temperatures dropping. Will end up in the 20s. Tonight, some local lake snow, especially east of Lake Ontario. Otherwise, becoming partly cloudy with flurries, low temps colder than last night, teens. Tomorrow, some early flurries for some, but a good deal of sunshine, high in the 30s. Friday is cloudy with rain, ice, and snow. Temperatures on Friday climbing toward 40 and then dropping back through the 30s.
All right, Kevin, thank you. Finally at noon with the Super Bowl less than 2 weeks away. One company wants you to recommend snacks for the big game and will pay you to do it.
The biggest football party of the year is right around the corner. With an estimated 127 million hungry people watching every year, the big game is a major event for grocery shoppers trying to feed a crowd. And financial website Finance Buzz is looking for one foodie fan to sample and rate the best game food at Costco. And they'll pay you for the food and pay you to do it. Finance Buzz will give you $1,000 to sample wings, pizza, mini tacos, chips, and other party food staples to let them and the world know how the competition stacks up. They'll also give you a $500 Costco gift card to cover the goods. The contest isn't affiliated with or endorsed by Costco. They're just looking for the biggest football foodie fan to give their best recommendations. If this contest interests you, you better hurry and not fumble. The deadline to apply through the Finance Buzz website is tonight at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. Brian Query, Family Life News.
All right, thank you, Brian. And that's our world, the world we live in. Wednesday, January 29th. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.